Hello everyone and welcome to Channel 18 TV News. I'm Don Julian. In the news, at a regular board meeting Monday night, the Sulphur Springs School Board had swearing-in ceremonies for new and re-elected board members. They elected board officers for the next year and approved 20 personnel recommendations. SSISD election officer Sandra Gibby administered the oath of office to Craig Roberts, John Prickett, and Lisa Tolliver. All three were unopposed during the May school election. Prickett and Tolliver are incumbents. Roberts replaces Clay Johnson, who was appointed in 2016 to fill the unexpired term of a board member who resigned. Johnson chose not to file for another term. He has served a total of 9 years on the board. The board voted to continue with Tolliver as board president and Robert Cody as vice president. The board also chose Jason Dietz as secretary of the board. The Hopkins County Detachment of the Marine Corps League will be paying tribute to peace officers on Peace Officers Memorial Day on Wednesday. The public is invited to attend. The ceremony will take place at the Veterans Memorial on the Sulphur Springs Plaza beginning at 8 a.m. Wednesday. Service flags will be lowered to half-staff, followed by the policeman's prayer. The large U.S. flag in the center of the plaza will then be lowered as taps is played. Coffee and donuts will be served. Flags will be raised to full staff at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday.
Local Western author Gene Shelton has not one but 2 books out on Amazon right now. These books are from his earlier publishing with publishing houses back in the 1970s and 80s and revived. This one is about the life and times of Texas Ranger Frank Hamer and his apprehension of Bonnie and Clyde. Let's find out more from Gene Shelton.
I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, and we moved from Amarillo to Dallas in '68 and then out here in '74.
So you really did live the life of a cowboy in your early years.
Yeah, the ranch I grew up on was a little over 50,000 acres. It was the northern division of the Matador Cattle Company.
Okay. And you did all kinds of horseback things.
Oh, yeah. Everything you could do on a ranch, including breaking horses and getting bucked off on my head, which is probably why I went into journalism.
Well, in one place I read that you said, Gene, you said some of the Westerns that you could read, if that was the kind of reading material that you enjoyed, weren't as realistic, like first person, so you decided you could do just as good or better.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first couple of paperback Westerns I read were so absolutely horrible. I knew that the people had never seen a horse, had no idea what kind of weapons and equipment was involved, and probably never seen a cow from the north side. So I decided I can do better than that. So I wrote the first novel and sent it over the transom to New York publisher. They got it. They took it.
So over the transom means you didn't have an appointment. They didn't agree to see you.
No, didn't even have a query letter. I just sent it to them.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, so that was the start of it all, and now 26 books later, I'm still doing it.
I am so pleased to be able to get you in here and have us to share this wealth of information, and we don't have near enough time. But so you sort of backed into more than one, I won't say career, but field of interest by writing books, researching characters,
right,
even solving mysteries as time has gone on.
At least on one occasion.
And then coming out with a reprint, I don't know if that's the correct wording, of a book that you wrote back in the 90s called Manhunter.
Yeah, that's the one on Amazon now is actually the second edition.
Okay.
Or second printing, second edition.
Okay.
So it's the one that is more extensive than the original that was published in New York. I was able to add some information that was left out of the first one.
Well, with the changeover of the industry from using the publishing houses to now self-publishing, and you didn't jump right into that immediately. You were kind of in the middle ground for a while. But I'm so happy that your career has been revived through this. But you wrote Manhunter back then to fit the regulations of the big publishing house.
Yes.
They made it a smaller book.
Yeah, I had to cut 30,000 words from the original manuscript because the marketing department didn't want to raise the price.
Okay. But thankfully, those 30,000 words in the original manuscript was saved.
Right.
And you were able to receive the rights to republish, in which it is out now on Amazon. Manhunter, a novel based on the life and times of Frank Hamer, Texas Ranger, written by Gene Shelton.
And it's what I wanted to do with the book was do more than just the Bonnie and Clyde episode. I wanted to actually cover his life from the time he was a youngster, because he did so much more than just hunt down Bonnie and Clyde. He was he wanted to be a preacher, but he wound up killing a man who had tried to kill him. And then he, after he recovered from those wounds, he decided that he was going to, he just went to work, back to work as a cowboy, and came within just a few seconds of being a bank robber himself. But that never happened, and then he wound up as a Texas Ranger shortly after that. So it was interesting. He actually rode with Blackjack Ketchum for a while. He was a pretty notorious outlaw out in the West. So he had an interesting life.
Well, your interest in Western, good Western novel, good Western reading, authentic, continues today, because the story of Frank Hamer, Texas Ranger, is one of those that kind of bridges the older days with the more modern.
Right. He went from horseback in Winchester days up to the days of automobiles, radios. And of course, his equipment and everything else changed, but he never did. And at his funeral, one of the people who delivered the eulogy said that he was fearless. Probably the greatest ranger who ever pinned on a badge. I don't know about the fearless part, because I think everybody's got a breaking point, but he never reached his, apparently. He was in 53 gunfights.
Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, and so his portion, well, let's say the movie that is out currently, The Highwayman, with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, features this ranger as a character.
Yes, it is. As I understand the film, I haven't seen it. As I understand, it deals specifically with the Bonnie and Clyde episode.
Okay.
And it doesn't get into his early career at all.
Okay. In this book, you'll find out much more about Frank Hamer, though, the man.
I hope so.
And the life. And that's what you like to do, is bring out all the facets of a person's life.
Right.
Well, soon it will be the anniversary of the ambush of Bonnie and Clyde.
Yes, that's coming up, I think, in 9 days, May 23rd, 1934.
Okay.
And that he was part of the posse that was put together to hunt him down. It included 4 other law enforcement officers, 2 from Louisiana, 2 from Dallas.
Well, this criminal duo had to be stopped, and they brought Frank Hamer out of a job he was already doing for the Texas Department of Corrections to be on this special posse.
Well, he was actually in private employment at the time.
Okay.
He was I guess, kind of the policeman for the oil industry. They had a lot of oil thefts back in those days. And he was, at the time, he was making over $500 a month in salary. And one of the state officials approached him and to make sure that, or to ask him if he would take the job of running down Bonnie and Clyde. So he gave up what was then a very lucrative job to work for about $120 a month as a law enforcement officer. And it was his wife that convinced him to go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, he'll always be remembered through this book and many other sources. Frank Hamer, the Texas Ranger that apprehended Bonnie and Clyde and put an end to that spree.
Yeah, there's also a list of acknowledgments in the back of the book that gives a number of references.
Okay.
If anybody's interested in finding out more about him.
Okay. Well, it makes me wonder, in your recovery of the rights to publish this book again under self-publishing and to restore the cut 30,000 words and more, go in and update it, do some more research and correct some errors that was in that very first printing back in the 90s. Makes me want to ask, have the rights of people who write and own manuscripts that they put together, have their rights changed or become more their own?
It depends on, well, if you're working with some of the New York publishing houses, it depends totally on the contract.
Okay.
And with self-publishing, when your name is on it and it's out there, you have the rights to it. So it's people who want to go into self-publishing, it's kind of a crapshoot. You either do well and make money with it, or you wind up paying a lot out of pocket just for copies for your friends.
Well, in your lifetime of writing, I'm happy to say that you've been able to revive your career. Maybe that's not what you set out to do, but it has happened because you now can bring these older works that were mostly in paperback to a fresh new audience.
Right.
Because I know people like Westerns. We still like Westerns.
Yeah. And it's hard to find a good Westerns in used bookstores. They're mostly available online now. And some of the old-time Westerns are being reprinted, like Zane Grey.
Okay.
Joe Johnstone.
And Gene Shelton.
Yeah.
What about Warriors, a novel of Texas' last Comanche Indian campaign?
That was basically the story of two completely different men. One of them a cavalry trooper, the other basically an Indian, raised. It was a white boy that was abducted at an early age in a Comanche raid, and was raised as a Comanche in Kiowa. And it's the overlapping story of the two men, the two cultures, and the way it's handled. I told the story of each one in alternating chapters.
Okay.
But it's set up in the Panhandle and South Plains, which is where I grew up, so I had to do a little bit less research on that one. But
I hate it because we're going to run out of time, but do you have any other of your older manuscripts that are on the shelf awaiting self-publishing and maybe appearance on Amazon?
Not at this time. We're negotiating to get the rights back on 7.
7 more?
7 more.
Well, I'm very pleased to get this news and to see you in this morning. Look online and find Gene Shelton books. Maybe you've got Gene Shelton books somewhere on a bookshelf in your house from their original printings.
Well, a lot of people do.
That would be neat to find some of those. Thank you for coming in. And now 26 books to your credit, is that correct?
Counting the ones that I wrote for hire, which I can't claim credit for, but
okay,
that's the total.
Okay. What are you working on something new right now?
I just finished my venture into the private eye genre, and it's with Wes Ferguson now, waiting to be edited and prepared.
A friend from the Longview News, is that right?
Longview News Journal.
Okay.
I've worked with him there.
We want to hear so much more of this story, and I hope that you will come back as more books make their appearance on.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you, Gene Shelton.
Thank you.
We will talk to you again very soon, I hope.
In sports, the Lady Cats district champion softball team earned 4 superlatives and had 13 team members on the all-district team selected recently by the district's coaches who could not vote for their own players. The Lady Cats had 15 players who qualified for academic all-district. Pitcher Bailey Haggerty was the co-district MVP. Sierra Smith was named the Defensive Player of the Year. Freshman Addison Cadell was selected as the Newcomer of the Year. Sulphur Springs won Coaching Staff of the Year. Making first team all-district for the Lady Cats were catcher Brinkley Driver, shortstop Kelsey Wallace, third baseman Kate Womack, center fielder Sadie Stroud, and utility player Abby Baer. Named second team all-district were first baseman Maddie Millsap, right fielder Allie Fight, and left fielder Nyla Lindley. Honorable mention selections were third baseman and designated player Landry Bell and courtesy runner and infielder Colbria Harrison. Academic all-district honors went to Abby Baer, Landry Bell, Addison Cadell, Brinkley Driver, Bailey Haggerty, Colbria Harrison, Tessa Holt, Nyla Lindley, Allie Fight, Maddie Millsap, Sierra Smith, Sadie Stroud, Kelsey Wallace, Darby Williams, and Kate Womack. Wildcats baseball team had 10 players selected to their all-district baseball team, recently chosen by the district's coaches who also were not able to vote for their own players. Making the first team for the Wildcats were first baseman Jackson Cheney, center fielder Austin Dodd, and utility player Caden Argenbright, who played catcher and shortstop. Making the second team were pitcher Will Sims, second baseman Colson Hale, left fielder Jace Thompson, and right fielder Cameron Harrison. Honorable mention selections were outfielder Connor Bergen, pitcher and catcher Jace Birchfield, and infielder and pitcher Payson Edwards. The Miller Grove track team had 4 athletes who had great state meet results this past Friday at UT Austin. Lady Hornet Georgia Bissonette won the state championship in the 3,200-meter run with a time of 11:19.92, a new state record. Also the school record and her personal best. Bissonette was second in the 1,600-meter run with a time of 5:23.71, her personal best. Jolie Fox placed ninth in the 3,200-meter run with a time of 12:32.23. Hornet Isaiah Billingsley took second place in the 3,200-meter run with a time of 9:49.45, a school record. Billingsley got fourth place in the 1,600-meter run with a time of 4:34.50, a personal best. Kobe Robertson won the 1,600-meter run with a time of 40:30.23. Robertson was sixth in the 3,200-meter run with a time of 10:05.51, his personal best. And that's Channel 18 TV News. I'm Don Julian. Thank you for joining me, and so long, everybody.